the start. It's about the membership. It's about us facilitating training that's going to raise the bar for the profession as a whole, facilitate that learning and that growth for people in the profession that are interested in what can we do to do a better job to prepare our people for the complexities and the challenges of the profession that they're in. We're an association that's committed to trainers and to training that also happens to run a world-class conference.
We have an entirely packed schedule over the course of a week. Every night at ILEETA is designed to get trainers to connect to each other and to the industries that support training and law enforcement.
And the environment here, and Ed was very intentional about creating this culture where it's a culture of peers. It should be on your bucket list of things to come. Once you've been here once, then you'll understand what all the buzz is about.
ILEETA is more than a conference.
It's not just sharing of academic theories, it's practical application for that research and that information. It's important to have a connection with like-minded people who are going through the same struggles, have been through the same struggles, knowing that you're not alone and that you have people that you can reach out to is something that a lot of trainers need.
This conference will always be the cornerstone. This conference will always be the pilgrimage that trainers take every year to find one another.
So just that connection is a critical component and an important piece of being part of this community of trainers, which is what it is.
Hello, and welcome to this very special edition of the ILEETA Learning Lab, an ILEETA webinar that is dedicated to the next steps in advancing training. So today we're joined by Carrie Avery from Odin Training Solutions and Ali Aldubaisi from Caden AI. Now, both of these organizations are truly invested in not only developing training for the future, but also in the performance and improvement of ILEETA. Caden AI, special thank you to you, both Ali and AJ and everybody who's made all this possible. They are our guidebook sponsor for the ILEETA conference. And so without any further ado, I want to turn this immediately over to Carrie Avery. Many of you know her from ILEETA, but with Odin Training Solutions. Over to you, Carrie.
All right. Thanks, Joe. I'm just going to jump in. If everybody who's here wants to introduce themselves in the chat, please feel free. Obviously, we recognize a lot of names, but if there's other people here, it's good for everyone to introduce themselves. So just where you're from and what you do or your role in training would be great for everyone to introduce themselves while I get started. Ali and I decided to come together to do a joint webinar to talk about scenarios. And so my part of it is I'm going to talk about sort of the cognitive science. Here, I'll just bring up the slide here. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to talk a little bit around traditional training patterns and what we normally see in training, purely looking at scenarios and how we use scenarios in training. I'm going to talk a little bit about the cognitive science and what the research shows of how we can improve learning and recall and application, and then a little bit around the strategic incorporation of scenarios, kind of what I've seen in my experience observing and evaluating a lot of training and also building a lot of training, what we're traditionally doing and what we should be moving towards and how we're incorporating scenarios into our training. So I'm going to be talking about classroom and online, both of them, because it's obviously all part of training. And then Ali's going to come in with Caden AI, and he's going to do a full demonstration of what their software can do. I can say personally, obviously, I met them at another conference, and I spent over an hour with them going through Caden and what it can do. And I was very, very impressed with what they've come up with. And I'm just excited about the opportunities that we have to improve the way that we're using scenarios in training, using software and technology like what Caden is building. So that's why we chose to team up to do this together. For those who don't know me, as Todd or Joe said, I'm Carrie Avery. So I own Odin Training Solutions Incorporated. It's just me. So I am everything from the CEO down to the janitor. It's my company, and I work as a training consultant. I've been designing and delivering training programs for over 20 years. I've been working exclusively with law enforcement for 16 years. I'm up in Alberta, Canada, and I've worked with every level of government in Canada, different agencies. I do a lot of work with agencies in the United States. I've done work with IACP. I do a lot of work with IATA. I do work with the CRITAC program. So we've done evaluations of major the training for some very large police agencies down in the States. And I was also honored to get to work internationally. I did advising on e-learning and training in El Salvador, and I worked with the police in Ukraine for 5 years advising them. So that's a little bit about me and my career. I also have a master's degree in education, and I teach in the Alberta Continuing Education program for the University of Victoria. And on the personal side, I just threw my fun photos in there, but I love stand-up paddleboarding. So that's usually where you'll find me in the summer when I'm not in the depths of snow and cold. And last year I got my black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All right, so a little bit around traditional trainings. Like I said, I do a lot of observation, evaluation. One of the things that I do in my consultancy is I'll go and I'll take a look at training, I'll observe, I look at all their training documents, and then I give recommendations back on what they can do to improve the training. So what I've seen over the years, and it's interesting when we go in and evaluate training, usually agencies are embarrassed because they know that they're doing things that they shouldn't necessarily be doing, or that they haven't documented their training properly, et cetera. But realistically, when we go in, what we see is the same everywhere. So it's unfortunate that they feel embarrassed, because they shouldn't. All agencies are tight on resources and have kind of been struggling with very, very heavy training loads and not necessarily the back end support to properly document or even design their training many times. So what I see when I observe or evaluate training is it's very lecture heavy, and that's still quite dominant. So we're still doing a lot of lecture. And what I see is a lecture, and then at the end of course, they do full-blown scenarios. So I'm happy that we have scenarios. Obviously, they're kind of the bread and butter when it comes to law enforcement training. Personally, I'm not a fan of doing scenarios. I hate acting and I hate being put on the spot. So if it was up to me, I probably wouldn't have them. But we know for learning purposes that scenarios are very, very effective, especially when we want them to try to piece together different pieces of information and content that we've been giving them, law, use of force, all of that kind of stuff, and trying to put it all together, even just communication and how to formulate your words. So these things that we kind of take for granted when we've been doing the job are things that people actually need practice in the beginning. But what I see is lecture, and then boom, full-blown scenarios, because there's this belief that we have to have actors and these kind of huge scenarios. We have to have them in specific scenes. We have to actually have them in cars and do a traffic stop, or we have to have them in a specific situation or out in a field or whatever, that we have to recreate everything as if it's real life. And most often what I see when I'm there observing scenarios is the instructors are scratching their heads saying, I don't know why they're not doing very well. Like, we covered all of this. I don't really understand why they're not doing well. I know why. And it's because we haven't properly prepared them to actually do the scenarios. So essentially, we've given them all of these silos of information. We've done law, we've done communication, we've done use of force and presence and all that stuff. And then on the spot, they're having to put all of that together and try to piece it all together in the right place, and then apply all of that and do decision making at the same time. So it's a massive overload on their cognitive load. And it's just very high expectation for people to perform like that when they've never done it before. So obviously, in a lot of our discussions, conversations, sessions, webinars, et cetera, we talk about the lecture heavy approach. Don't believe the cone, we call it Dale's cone of lies about you remember 5% of what you hear and 20% of what you read, or whatever it is. It's the cone of lies. Anyways, that's not proven. There's no research that supports that. There's no definitive, like, you learn 5% of everything you hear, because there's a whole system involved in what you remember and what you recall and how motivated were they, et cetera. Did we do any applications? So the numbers are much more flexible than Dale's cone presents, that you only remember 5%. That's not exactly true. You can remember more, but it is still less than when we use engagement methods. So that is supported by the science. It's mainly those strict numbers that are not. So passive learning, usually if we just talk to people and then have them do a test, it's somewhere in the realm of 5 to 10%. Once we start engaging people, because learning is active and we need to be engaged in learning, it goes up to over 50% at times. So some of the things that the science has shown, which when I started 20 years ago, a lot of this research and science didn't exist. So we've known the whole time that engagement is key, that people need to be active in their learning, they need to be doing things. But what they've learned through more science and more research, and there's quite a few books and research studies out on this, is these are the areas that we now know for sure enhance memory recall and application. So we have retrieval practice, desirable difficulty, and space learning. These are the three. It's starting to become fairly common knowledge now that these are the things that we should be focusing on when we want to improve learning. So retrieval practice is the process of actively recalling information from memory. So this significantly boosts long-term retention. So in the past, that's looked like quizzes and tests and that kind of thing. When you have like the pop quiz or you do the little tests at the end, that's retrieval practice. But what we've learned from the research is that we can even push it further than that. And one of the things we can do to help people retrieve is to just have them write on a blank piece of paper. So now they're having retrieve from scratch. We're not giving them questions or cues to retrieve. We can try that. But then we do want to go into real world and application. So when we do any type of scenario or exercise or activity, we want to push them to actively retrieve the information, even if they get it wrong, which I'm going to talk a little bit about when to actually place scenarios and when to do these things. Even when they get it wrong, they're still learning from it. So this is not about perfection. It's just about practice and pushing your brain to actually recall and pull that information forward. So the research shows that training with repeated retrieval exercises can improve recall by over 30%. And our goal is to integrate retrieval practices into learning scenarios. So we want to engage people and have them not only retrieve, but in scenarios, we're having them to actually apply and get into the higher levels of thinking where they're doing decision making. So they're having to evaluate situations and make decisions. So the more of the retrieval practice we can get in, the better they're going to do at the end. Desirable difficulty. So this one's always a fun challenge because we're lazy by nature. So we take the path of least resistance if we can get away with it. Even though we know scientifically that desirable difficulty is good, we tend to not want to do it that way. And we see a lot of people show up for training. They're sitting at the back. They're ready to just sit and listen to you lecture to a PowerPoint. And sometimes they're a little put out or even annoyed when we make them do a lot. So suddenly when they have to do group work and they have to be answering questions and we have them doing mini scenarios, sometimes they're not happy because they've kind of been conditioned that I'm just going to show up and listen and you're going to hand me a certificate at the end of the day. But if we take those people and test them a couple weeks later, a month later, chances are their recall is going to be very low. So desirable difficulty is basically making it challenging. So we want to push them enough so that they're using their brain. So that's part of retrieval practice. So we want to make it hard enough and we want to progress the challenges to encourage active problem solving, deeper cognitive engagement. So that's the higher levels that I was talking about. We want to get into evaluation and decision making is the end goal so that all of that transfers when they go on the job. So effortful retrieval strengthens memory and supports long-term retention. And they've proven this again with studies over and over again. And as I said, this promotes transfer, which is one of the biggest things. And one of the things sometimes we forget, especially in research, we're so busy studying, can they pass a test? And we're not looking as much at, can they transfer it to the job? So now we're seeing more research that's actually looking at that transfer and what goes to the job, especially thanks to body-worn camera, that we now have footage that we can use to evaluate that type of application. And we're not solely relying on people just writing tests to see what they can remember. So desirable difficulty, we want people to have to think and work. Sometimes they're not happy about it, so you may not have the highest reviews when you start doing this to people, but we know for learning purposes that it's far more effective. And then space learning. So this is trying to optimize practice over time. So we want to distribute if we can. So instead of having the one silo of we're going to do 8 hours of communication, and then we're going to do some scenarios that are communication only, and you're going to walk out there and, okay, now you're a communication master, and then we go on and do 3 more months of training after that, and we never go back and visit that again. And these are where we see the disconnects in transfer or on the job when their FTOs or PTOs are saying, oh, they're terrible at communication, or they don't necessarily know their authorities, and things that we know we covered in training. And that's because we didn't space learning and come back to it and make sure that we're covering it again and again, and trying to space it out. So if you spent 4 hours on one topic on one day, and then they do a test, there is an actual study on this that was done for ILEETA. And we tested them and they did quite low. But if you did an hour a week over 4 weeks, they do significantly better, especially like a month down the road, it's significantly better. So space learning is one of the things that we want to try and bring in when we can. Sometimes it's only a 1-day class, so there's only so much we can do. But when we look at space learning, and Ben also suggests sort of following up afterwards, which helps with space learning and kind of reminders when we're using stuff like that. Definitely, we're now spacing it out and reminding people, remember, we covered this in training, or even enhancing the training with new things. And I know one of the other things, if you're on, especially on sort of the ILEETA Facebook page, and you see Dwayne Wolf is talking about how we can use videos for learning and roll call training, but we can also use them in other areas. So that's another way to kind of space it out and revisit and look at decision making. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the strategic incorporation of scenarios for maximum impact. So again, this goes back to a lot of the evaluation I've done, training that I've looked at, and training that I designed. So I'm just going to talk about all the different times that you can actually put scenarios in. So one of the things that we don't do very often, or it's pretty rare to see, is actually having a scenario at the beginning of training. And we also do this with pre-assessments, but doing one at the beginning, people are quite reluctant because they haven't learned. It can also be quite frustrating, but what we want to do is highlight what do people know and what we're piquing their interest and what don't they know. So if you put them into a situation, even something super basic, having to issue a traffic ticket or something along that line, and all of a sudden they realize, like, I'm not even sure, or I'm not sure, am I detaining this person, and am I not to say what authorities do I have to do this? So that kind of stuff. So when we put them in a scenario at the beginning, something very basic, and suddenly they realize, oh, I didn't know this, I didn't know my authorities, I wasn't sure, kind of, am I allowed to give a warning, that kind of thing. So we're activating, what do I already know about this topic and what don't I know? So that's cognitive hooks and motivation. So we're now piquing their interest, and we're starting with retrieval practice. So what do I already know, especially when we're doing experienced officer training, annual training, that type of thing, is what do they already know about this and what don't they know? So also the beginning is when we have the highest level of interest. So when we look at recency effect, and the order that we present information at the beginning and the end is when we have like kind of peak brain power. So the beginning, when we have that peak brain power, we really want to take advantage of that and do something meaningful. And a scenario is an opportunity. I'm not saying we have to run full scale. You could just do something in writing. Just do like a little case study. You could have them work in groups at the very beginning and work through either a written scenario, or you can have them watch a video and kind of give, what do you think we would do, or what would we do next, that type of thing. So when I talk about scenarios, it's not just full scale scenarios. That was one of the biggest things I wanted to talk about in this webinar is people have kind of like a singular vision of what scenarios are. And scenarios can be lots of things. We can do small scale scenarios. You can just put people in pairs and have them practice. All right, you're going to interview each other, or you're going to try to issue a ticket. Like I said, helping people sort of find their words and practice. Like, what would you say in this situation? How do you introduce yourself? Like, there's a lot of very small things that we don't really cover in just little practice scenarios. We don't necessarily have to run full blown with the instructors there, syndicate leaders there, doing grading and rubrics and the whole thing. Just give people opportunities to practice. So the second one obviously contributes to everything is embedding them throughout. So this is sort of what I was talking about. If you do exercises on communication, consider having small scenarios within there, again, where they just do small groups, maybe a group of 3. One person is the officer, one person is the person being questioned, and the other one is an observer. They're all learning in that experience. There's actually a lot to be said with being on the other side and being the person who's being questioned because you're drawing on emotion. You're actually experiencing what it's like to be questioned or what it's like to experience whatever it is they're practicing. And so it gives you a little bit of empathy and kind of some idea of what it's like to be on the other side. Police seem to be hung up on this, like we have to have actors. We have to have actors because they know each other. And but they really do lose that experience. And I'm going way back in my history, back to when I was a lifeguard and a swimming instructor. And one of the things that we had to do in lifeguard training was that we had to play victims all the time. And we could actually fail for not being a good victim because we were expected to know the difference between an injured swimmer and a non-swimmer. And we had to display what that actually looks like. What is the difference? How does a non-swimmer look when they're in the deep end of the pool versus somebody who's injured or just struggling? And so that was part of our learning and our recognition, was to be able to show what a non-swimmer looks like. And these are the things that we should be incorporating into police training as well, is that people should be able to demonstrate what a compliant versus sort of the passive non-compliant and actual non-compliant. They should be able to sort of demonstrate that in scenarios so that they know what it looks like when they see it when they're on the other side. So there's a lot of benefits, and I'm not saying don't have the actors. They certainly serve their point. When you don't know each other, obviously it's a whole different situation and a different level of stress, but those are usually for the end. So we still want the big scale at the end, but I'm talking about looking at incorporating a lot more throughout training. Also just gets them a lot more used to doing scenarios, having people observe them, all that type of stuff that we want them to get good at and get comfortable with before we throw them into those full scenarios, especially when the full scenarios are graded and their career depends on them passing them. So this is all preparing everyone. So the first word on here is scaffolding. And that's a huge thing that I see missed, is that we want to scaffold people to independence and to higher level critical thinking. So start easy, start a small scenario, 2 people, nothing's on the line, no one's even watching you, and then start moving up to bigger scenarios, people observing, that type of thing. So we're scaffolding their independence. This builds confidence, gets them more comfortable, even just speaking in front of while they're being observed and somebody is writing stuff down. And we can identify knowledge gaps. So once we get into bigger ones, we can see, especially if you have instructors who are observing these a little bit bigger, if we get like groups of 4 and we have people running scenarios and observing them, then the instructors can see this is what people are getting and this is what they're not getting. So this is something we may want to cover again. Again, they're engaged, they're actively learning. Even if they're observing, there's still a lot of brain power going on there, interleaving and the recall. So they're having retrieval practice. They're having to pull forward everything. So Jason's just asking a question, around sort of, is there research? I'll go look specifically. I'm sure there is. But most of the research I've read is I am sort of cobbling together all of the other research on what works for learning and then why that goes to scenarios. But I'll take a look and see if we have more that is specific to scenarios. I can't imagine that scenarios hasn't specifically been researched. I'll take a look for you, Jason. So one of the other things that I don't see very often is we can extend scenarios beyond a single day. So especially if you're doing something around investigations or something that's sort of longer term, is consider having one scenario or one case study that you go through, and then you keep coming back and revisiting it. That again, retrieval practice. We're taking people back to what we already did. Remember this situation, and now we're in the next stage of the situation. And you can do any type of call really for that. If you're doing anything a little bigger with some follow-up and like domestic violence, et cetera. Okay, so you go in and then you speak to the complainant, and then maybe you do interviewing, or you talk about having to do a suspect interview. And then you can go back to the same scenario. So we're progressively building on the skill set. We're reflecting back, and it also saves us the time from having to keep setting up a new scenario every single time. So also consider using the same scenario and extending it out, so we keep going back and revisiting it. I do this for scenarios that they do. I also do it in my presentation material. So if I can loop one scenario through an entire lesson, I'll do that, because we're tying all the concepts together and showing how they all apply in real life. Right. So really, kind of to summarize it, is we're really trying to build competence. And the biggest thing I talk about is scaffolding, and looking at starting small, starting easy, not much on the line, and then we're building up to those full scale exercises. That's the goal. We want to get them more and more comfortable, and have them, instead of just learning like authorities and law, having them actually apply them into real situations where they're having to think on their feet, not necessarily just sitting and writing down. And like, we can start with sitting and writing down an answer for scaffolding, but then the next time we want them to actually do it in a real scenario, kind of thinking on their feet, with not a lot at stake. So we're not grading you with rubrics. Then we want to move up maybe to a bigger scale scenario. Again, you're going to now get feedback. Someone's going to be observing you. And then we move up to the full scale scenario. And like, I just really encourage people to run these in the classroom. Just have people like separate off into little sections. I think people kind of have a scenario built up as a really big thing in their mind, that has to be this full scale thing. And I really encourage people to think a lot smaller than that. And then as we're going to look at what Caden is bringing in, so they're bringing in online scenarios, and you look back at sort of the different times that I suggested, doing it before training. So an online program that we can have people now go and log in and run a scenario, so everybody gets to run their own scenario, and he'll be able to show you how their software can do that. So we can have them do it ahead of time, or even at the beginning of class. If everyone has computers, they can log in and practice running scenarios throughout class. So at the end of lessons, or just in between days, when we have waiting time. So when you are running full scale scenarios and everyone's sitting around waiting for something, that's another time where we can start inserting these the AI based scenarios. So now we can start, and now we're really going to get to start capitalizing on repetition, which is the thing that we've been missing, because scenarios require so much resources and time. When we look at the kind of the newer AI software coming out, I see just a lot of opportunity for people to be able to go and learn on their own, in isolation, maybe so they're not embarrassed when they're first learning. I know every time I have to run an AI scenario, I realize like how little I know about policing, despite designing training for 15 years. As soon as I'm the one that has to like question somebody who witnessed a robbery or whatever, like something super basic, and I'm completely tripping over my words because I never actually did the job. So yeah, I can very quickly see how it takes time and effort to get your words and understand how to actually apply all of that. So I'm really excited about the type of AI software that's coming out, because I see huge opportunities for us to make our training much more effective, and to be able to build this competence where they've practiced and run scenarios over and over again, just practice giving tickets or asking questions or whatever, before they get to that full scale scenario, or before they're on the job with an FTO. So this is just reiterating again, scalable, low cost, repeated exercises. If you have access to online resources, you can have them practicing after class, in the evenings, in between, when there's waiting time, that type of thing, or if you have breaks in between your training. So if you have a class that runs once a week, because then we would have spaced learning. So instead of bringing everybody in on the same day, we have people come in every Tuesday for 3 weeks. So then we can incorporate and start utilizing some of these online scenarios. So we want to enhance skill fluency, reduce the need for costly full-scale simulations. So when everything goes sideways and they do something that we fully expected them not to do, a lot of time we have to rerun that scenario again. So we have to think about the cost of time and resources when we're rerunning scenarios, where if we better prepared them in the beginning, we would massively reduce the number of times we have to rerun scenarios or the amount of time that we have to spend. Again, if we're using an online program, the instructors have access to those scenarios. We can actually grade scenarios that were done online. And so we can make sure that all the skills are there before full-scale scenarios. And the other thing is supporting quicker error correction and continuous improvement. So that's similar to the FTO PTO concept. Is one person, we can have more one-to-one coaching and just do quick corrections versus having to go through and teach everybody else because 3 people made the same mistake in the scenario. So we got to go back and teach everyone. So it definitely makes us a lot more agile and more effective in our training. All right, so Paul shared one of the studies. So thank you very much. I'm going to look that up as well afterwards and just check to see if we have more. I'm sure there's some meta-analysis as well out there on role play scenarios and training. So now I'm going to turn this over to Ali with Caden, and we'll have time for questions at the end.
Thanks, Gary. Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Eldebasi. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Caden AI. And we built Caden AI to be an AI-powered training scenario platform for law enforcement. And it allows you to build the kind of realistic scenarios and allow for that realistic repetition that Carrie just walked us through the research on and the breakdown of that. I just want to make sure that you can see my screen. Perfect. So instead of walking you through the entire platform from the get-go, I'm actually going to do exactly what Carrie mentioned, and it's dropping us into a scenario. So we are going to start off with a scenario, common scenario responding to a noise complaint. And what you'll see is that it's an AI scenario where the trainee talks to a realistic AI character or persona who would respond based on what the user or the trainee would say and how they say it. And it's not a scripted scenario. It's not branched on the back end of the scenario. It's a live conversation. So I'm going to run through this as if I was a recruit, and you'll see exactly what that experience would look like. So like I said, this is a noise complaint scenario, and I'm the responding patrol officer, and I'm going to be speaking with the complainant.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Officer Ali with the City Police Department. How are you doing today?
Honestly, not great. I'm so tired of this noise issue. It's been going on for weeks.
Okay.
And tonight is.
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry to interrupt, but you said this has been going on for a while?
Yeah, for weeks now. It's like every other night, sometimes even more. Tonight, it's too much. I can't take it anymore.
Okay. And have you talked to the person about this, your neighbor?
Yeah, I tried once, but they just kind of brushed me off like it wasn't a big deal. I didn't want to start a fight or anything, so I let it go, but it's not stopping.
Okay. And do you happen to know the neighbor's name or which apartment number they're at?
Yeah, it's the unit right above me. Apartment 3B. I don't know their name, though.
Okay. And what is your full name, sir?
It's Cooper Hayes.
Okay. And do you know if they live alone or they have other folks in the unit?
I'm not sure, honestly. I hear different voices sometimes, so maybe they have people over. I don't really know who actually lives there.
Okay. And have you spoken to the building management about this? Told them about the noise issue?
Yeah, I did. I told them a couple of times, but they just said they'd look into it. Nothing's changed, though. It's like no one's taking it seriously.
Okay. Well, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and speak with the neighbor, and I'll come back and I'll follow up with you after. How does that sound?
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. I really hope this helps. I can't keep dealing with this.
Yeah.
Thank you for looking.
Yeah, no problem. And can I get a good phone number?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's 555-782-3491.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So that was a quick run through that scenario. It's processing the call, and it's going to generate an evaluation for me based on the conversation, based on what I said, how I said it, and it'll also give me a description of the evaluation I'm being graded on. It also provides a justification on why I passed or why I failed this specific criteria, and it also points me to evidence on where exactly in the conversation this occurred. So take a look at this direction and instruction to civilians. The description of this criteria is that the officers provides clear, simple verbal directions. The direction that civilians can easily follow without confusion. And then for the justification, it tells me that, I briefly explained the intended action, checked for agreement. How does that sound? But doesn't provide clear, simple directions for the complainant to follow. So obviously this was a pretty quick run through, and these evaluations are not tied to an actual agency's criteria. These are more of just demonstrative criterias. But I can go in, I see that, okay, this is the timestamp. I can play back the audio for in that specific timestamp. Just you talk to the person about this, your neighbor.
Yeah, I tried once, but
So I can listen back to the full recording. I can even look at the transcript if I want, instead of having to replay the whole thing. But like I said, you'll be able to look at the evaluations, the criteria that are tied to that specific scenario. And as an instructor, you have the ability to configure this, edit this, either adjust the criteria, add more criteria to it. But realistically, what we just saw is a 3-minute run of a scenario. A recruit can run through this anywhere. It's not you're not dependent on any hardware. You don't need like desktop installations or whatnot. You can run a trainee can run through this on their phone. They can run through this in if they're in field training, they can run through scenarios in their with their field training officers in the patrol car. And the real training power behind this is that there's that progressive disclosure of information that teaches the recruit to ask more thorough, specific questions. So if they don't ask those specific questions, the AI, depending on how it's the instructions for the AI are set up, but it'll be harder for them to actually give up information. So to tie it back to actually what Carrie covered is that you can assign this. You can assign this specific scenario week 1, again week 4, again week 10 of the academy's cycle, or throughout the year if it's for non-academy use cases. But that's the spaced repetition part of it. And like we know, the brain generally builds stronger connections every time somebody revisits that specific action or that specific learning experience. So that's one scenario. It's one type of scenario that we have. This is the subject interaction. where the trainee interacts with a subject. This could be a victim, a suspect, a witness. Now, we have different accents and different voices that are available in the system. This is the one that we just saw is just one voice. We also recently added, like I said, accents and language options. So, if you're interacting with somebody who speaks limited English with a strong, let's say, Spanish accent, that adds another layer of realistic communication that are pretty common for officers responding to calls. Now, the second type of scenario that we have, or the second type of scenario mode that we are able to create, is what we're calling the legal and policy tutoring. I'm going to run through this type of scenario. Keep in mind that this is based on like a general account. This is not agency specific, but we allow agencies or academies or trainers to upload their general orders, city ordinance, department-specific policies, where the context of this now is based off of the agency-specific material. And it's not interacting as a subject, it's more of interacting with a tutor that's throwing questions or putting you in scenarios where you have to now explain what you would do in this situation. It'll continue to escalate the situation, so it'll start adding new information to the scenario and test your reasoning behind what decisions you make. So I'll run through this real quick.
Welcome. Are you ready to start?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start.
You are dispatched to a report of a suspicious person loitering near a closed business late at night. The caller says the person has been there for about 20 minutes and appears to be looking into windows. What would you do in this type of situation? Talk me through it.
So I would, dispatch radio, let them know that I'm going to interact with the subject, give a description of the subject, and then proceed to engaging the subject and obviously identifying myself and asking them what they're doing.
Okay, good start. You're thinking about communication and making contact. Let me ask you this. What's your immediate priority when you arrive on scene? What are you trying to accomplish first?
Well, like I said, I would approach the individual. I would make sure that the scene is safe, that there aren't any other individuals there, and then ask the individual what they're doing.
All right, you're focusing on safety and gathering information, which is solid. Let me push you a bit. What risks are you trying to manage as you approach? And how does that affect how you engage the person?
I would look for any items that they might be holding, a weapon, hands in their pocket, things like that.
Good. You're thinking about potential threats. Now let's add a small change. As you approach, you notice the person is holding a crowbar. Does your approach or your priorities change? What do you do differently now, and why?
Yeah, I would change because now I have reason to believe that they are trying to break into the building. So I would tell them to drop the crowbar.
All right, you're adjusting based on the new information, which is good. But let's think this through. What authority are you relying on to give that command? And how would you phrase it to manage the situation safely?
Well, I have, if they're holding a crowbar and, based on the information from the initial dispatch, I would have probable cause to assume that they are trying to break into the store.
You're on the right track with probable cause, but let's refine it. At this point, you likely have reasonable suspicion to detain them for investigation, not necessarily probable cause for a crime yet. So your authority comes from your ability to conduct an investigative detention. How would you phrase your command to ensure compliance while keeping the situation calm?
All right, so I will stop it right here before I start running out of the right answers. but as you see, it is giving me new information. It's adding more components to the situation to allow me to be able to describe my reasoning for whatever action I take. So this is the evaluation here, again, is very general, and it's going off of where I stopped the conversation. This can be set up to align with agency-specific policies, and how an instructor or trainer would configure this. But similar setup, you can go through the transcript and read through it, and then adjust as you see fit. The real thing with the policy tutoring is just that ability to create scenario-based training grounded in agency-specific policies, especially when you have a new update in policy, or even when you have a new incoming recruits to the department that are out of the academy, whether you want to assess how well they know the department policy, or just giving that refresher. This becomes a crucial tool to be able to scale training. A lot of the times we can create really good training or really realistic scenarios, but the problem we face is that we can't scale that training. With Kaizen, you're able to scale that training. You're able to refine that training, grounded in policies specific to your department or your state-specific statutes, and like I said, be able to scale that. And we have a few more minutes just to walk through other parts of the system. Like I said, these are two types of tutoring scenarios, or these are two types of scenarios, one being that subject interaction, the other being that policy tutoring scenario. Other important parts of the system that I think are beneficial for trainers and instructors is the ability to create scenarios from two methods. You can you use our setup wizard, which basically is to create a hyper specific scenario, and you're going through. I'm not going to go through the whole thing just for the sake of time, but basically it's a step-by-step guide that allows you to input information to define the scenario, get really creative with it. That's to create one scenario. The other method we have is the scenario generator, where you're able to upload a file. It could be a lesson plan, it could be a policy, and you're able to actually generate several scenarios from that. So I'm gonna I don't know if you can see my file upload, but if I upload a file, I just uploaded a hit and run lesson plan, and it'll process the information in the lesson plan. It'll identify specific parts of the lesson that are relevant to creating a specific scenario, and then you'll be able to add more details as the file continues processing. Just give it a second. So right now I don't have any groups associated in this account, but you're able to, if you have groupings set up in your library, and libraries are a place to organize and manage scenarios, but you can, add it to an existing group. And actually I do have existing groups, but it'll also recommend new groups. I can select the group I want. I can go ahead and then set how many variations. I can create up to 10 variations of scenarios off of that specific lesson plan. And then I'm able to then see or preview what scenarios it generates off of that lesson plan. I'm able to also then edit that scenario and then publish it to the library. This does take a second just because it's processing the information in real time and it's generating the outputs. So we can give that a second. It'll automatically pair it with a voice that's, every voice we have in the system has some sort of characteristic. So this individual generally is aggressive, or this persona voice is generally aggressive. and the scenario that it generated, it paired the right scenario with the persona. And then you'll see the full system prompt, the description. You can go in and edit that information as you see fit, and then select, let's say generates 10 scenarios. You only want to take 2 scenarios. You can review and then publish it to your library. Every scenario, like I said, you have a library. Scenarios fall in libraries. This is the Caden library is a library we manage and publish scenarios and periodically that are visible to everyone. These are meant to be either examples or templates that you can clone or duplicate to your organization or private library. And then based on what you have in there, you can assign, I can assign an individual scenario as a task for my trainees or my staff, or I can assign the entire batch of scenarios within a specific group. I'm able to set, obviously, like the task name. I can limit how many attempts an individual can run through. I can set due dates and reminders, and then I'm able to basically track all these tasks for students or trainees in the system itself. Last thing I'll cover is the evaluation section. So evaluations are managed independently from scenarios. This allows you to mix and match between specific evals with what scenarios they are used in. Similar to the scenario generator, you're able to import your files. This could be, again, if your learning objectives are listed in a lesson plan, then you can upload a lesson plan. It'll parse through it and then generate a set of criterias relevant to that. You can manually enter your criterias, and we're able to create single criterias, or if you want to have a parent criteria and children criterias in there, you're able to do that as well. And then you have a dashboard where you're able to track the scores, the sessions, minutes, and see a grade book of based on the tasking that you've assigned. So to bring it all together, I know I covered a lot in about 10 minutes now. But basically what Carrie covered today is the research, and what we're showing right now is how to or not necessarily the research, but the compilation of different research areas into scenario-based training. And our system is designed really from the ground up with those principles in mind, to allow for that type of whether it's scenario creation or that ability to create large sets of scenarios and scale the training process. So my contact information is going to be shared, or you can reach out to Joe, or probably somewhere online on the ILEETA website. Happy to jump on a call, answer questions about this, or even build out maybe a few example scenarios that are tied to agency specific policies. But thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll hand it back to Joe.
Hey, and welcome back. Awesome. To both of you, thank you so much for you both being here today and everything you've done to put this together. We've had some tremendous conversation going over here in the chat. And so I want to turn this right back over to you guys and get a couple of these questions answered as soon as possible. One of them was from Ian Tyndall over in Australia, which I think, Ali, you kind of answered, which is this is all contained online and the ability to use it on any platform, anytime. He brings up a privacy concern. So can you address some of the privacy concerns and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of security and privacy, we align within the United States. We align with whatever state IT security requirements So right now we're deployed in 5 states in the U.S. We also have a SOC 2 type 2 compliance that allows us to really be able to confidently roll this out to most agencies. In terms of the learner privacy and their data, once we roll out an instance of Kden to an audience, you have full control over that environment. You, as an agency, would have a root administrator that is managing the entire instance. We generally don't have access to this anymore once we roll it out, or access to the platform or your instance of the platform. We obviously manage the IT side of the house if anything breaks, bugs that come up. But if you, for example, choose to delete a user, we retain data for up to, I believe, certain number of weeks. But once that period passes, we don't have access to that information. When we just keep this to be a convenience for agencies that might delete somebody accidentally, want to bring back their info. But you have full control over that data. And in terms of us using any of the data, we don't touch any account data. So scenarios you create, student data, all that is managed and controlled by the agencies. We don't use to train any models based on that information, or to use it. Obviously we have some agencies that reach out and want to publish scenarios that they create in the Kden library just to benefit other departments, especially on relevant topics. So that's an option we have, but generally, other than what an agency would want to share with us, it's your account, your data.
Perfect. And, Ian, you even mentioned it in the comment that you made that you'll catch up at the conference. I think you're absolutely spot on. Look for Ali and the rest of the team from Kden AI at the conference, because I'm sure you may have some other questions specific to Australia and some of the things you're dealing with. This is kind of a question to both of you, Carrie and Ali, regarding kind of a mixture from Paul and Ben, regarding the agents and the AI actors that we have in the system. Do they change demeanor, and can they show signs of aggression verbally and that sort of stuff? And then kind of a two-part question here. What if at some point I make the determination that I need to go hands-on, or I'm going to escalate to using some sort of a weapon platform, whether it's impact weapons, CEWs, firearms, whatever? How can I integrate this platform in that way?
Yeah, so I guess my part of the answer to this is I tried to keep it PG in terms of what scenarios I show. You can definitely, part of scenario creation is we have a challenging factors section where you're able to introduce, using profanity, lying, aggression. All of that is controlled by the instructor creating the scenarios, and you have full capabilities into creating the most realistic scenarios and adding the factors that you want. And part of the way that we design these scenarios, or design the engine that runs these scenarios, is that you are dealing with a real person. You want to show that realistic interaction. So if I am aggressive from the get-go, then that individual's hostility is going to be very high. And based on what I say, that demeanor would go down. I'm able to engage. But even that itself can be configured to how you want to see that play out. In terms of action, so you said it might escalate, the situation might escalate. I can't verbally de-escalate it, and I have to now make an arrest or detain that individual. We're actually rolling out a few items in the next couple of months where you're able to select an action. So you're able to kind of determine, what action you're taking. Are you detaining them? Are you just giving them a citation? So that's coming out in the next couple of months. And currently, the way you do this, you'd have to verbally say, so I'm going to detain you, or I'm going to give you a citation, just to show that, the action, or verbally say the action you're taking.
Awesome. Thank you. Carrie, any insight on that?
No.
Okay.
That question was really more for Ali.
Yeah, and there's some interesting conversation here to be had, perhaps at the conference when they find you both, and how we integrate this. I know there's this, we don't want to train in silos where we create this space where this is happening here, and then we have to switch to something else. But I think this gives us an opportunity within the scope of what this makes available, some tremendous things to work with. So unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our time. I've got a long list of questions over here that I have for both of you, and I know there are probably some others out there. Here's the thing. Both of these individuals are going to be at the conference. Doc Davis is running a class at the conference where he's integrating the Caden AI platform into some of the demonstrations, and the Caden AI team is going to be assisting him. So without any further ado, I don't want to spend too much time, here. I want to turn it back over to first Carrie. Any final thoughts for the group?
No, just in addition to what Joe was saying around sort of the silos and the switching, is one of the huge opportunities I see here is incorporating this into online learning, so that we can do a module and we can actually have them now go and run scenarios, which has been a huge limitation of online learning that we've had. So I see a lot of opportunities, even just in the online world, when you look at agencies where people are quite spread out and can't necessarily come into training all the time, or like we know it's quite hard to get everybody in. And so there's a lot of opportunity, even just in the online world, to have them now running scenarios as part of online learning. So I just see opportunities all over for this type of technology. So,
awesome. Ali.
We are a startup, or an early stage startup, so I'm super excited to be at the conference and bring your ideas, whether you can see the platform integrating with some other platform where, kind of what Joe touched on, without having to manage two separate platforms. We're very open to ideas, and we love to be challenged in what we build within the platform. So super excited to meet the folks that are here at the conference. And thanks, Joe and Carrie, for setting this up.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you both and all of these folks in just a couple of weeks in St. Louis. So on behalf of ILEETA, Ali, thank you to Caden AI once again for being a great sponsor, a great friend to ILEETA. Having just met this year, you've already contributed significantly. And Carrie, you continue to contribute each and every day in a lot of great things you do. So thank you both.
Thanks, Joe.
thanks.